Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Stephanie Bree, and today we're doing another television network retrospective reminiscing kinda sort of. But this time we're comparing two networks that are technically still around, but yet again, not what they once were. Today we're comparing TCM, which used to stand for Turner Classic Movies, and AMC, which used to stand for American Movie Classics. Why are we talking about these? Well, because today times are different. Today we have streaming services, and AMC is basically the Walking Dead network, and I don't know if TCM is even still around, or what they do if they are. Probably reality shows for all I know. I can't get too deep into the history of either network because they have basically similar stories. AMC started out as basically a startup company in the early 80s. It was like an HBO alternative. It was a paid network you had to pay for to get access to, and it stood for American Movie Classics. And it was like HBO. It was showing, uncut, commercial-free, theatrically released movies. But it was showing older movies from the catalog. It wasn't showing blockbuster hits that were relevant and new, like HBO and Cinemax and Showtime were doing. That was the differentiator. Now, adjacent to this, but also around the same time, not exactly the same time, but around the same time, within a few years of AMC coming into existence, Ted Turner, who had basically started cable TV with TBS and TNT, was expanding his cable offerings as he was getting into financial entanglements with Time Warner, we'll say. That's the easiest way to say it. During the time of his becoming involved with Time Warner, he wanted to expand his offerings on cable TV. So he launched some new networks. CNN, the Cartoon Network, and TCM, Turner Classic Movies. Turner Classic Movies was not American Movie Classics. It was similar in that it was a cable channel that played old movies from the Turner catalog, which were movies he bought. He bought I believe it was the MGM catalog, and Time Warner had the Warner Brothers catalog. Up to a point. Well, obviously they had everything, but it was weird because Turner got like MGM movies up to a certain point, and then somebody else got the rest of their catalog. I don't remember. It's complicated. I don't give a shit. Anyways, basically he was drawing from the MGM and the Warner Brothers catalog, and he was showing old movies, but he was not. It was not a premium paid network like HBO or AMC. It ran commercials, and it had many documentaries and things like that to accompany the movie. So you would have a host that would introduce the movie, and then they would play the movie. And then during commercial breaks, in between commercial breaks, before the movie came back, they would give you snippets and tidbits of information about the movie. This was the formula for TCM. AMC did not do this until the late 90s. When they became a basic cable network, when they stopped being a premium paid channel. They started doing something called Fear Fest, which was a Halloween horror movie themed programming block that ran at the tail end of October that was sort of like what TCM was doing around the clock. It's just that they were only doing it during this period. The rest of the time, AMC had some programming blocks that were similar to this, but for the most part, they were just showing old movies. That's it. It was just 24 hours of old movies. But their catalog came from other places because they had to license the movies because they didn't own them like Turner and Warner did. So their movies, they could draw movies from anywhere. They could even get movies from Turner and Time Warner if they wanted to pay the bucks for it, which they occasionally did. Occasionally. Not often, but it happened. Now, in the late 90s, early 2000s, Fright Fest, Horror Fest, whatever you want to call it, evolved into a huge cable TV event every October. Eventually, they started adding an online component as the internet became a thing, or more of a thing than it was. And eventually, they slowly started offering classic movies on their website that you could stream. And then Netflix became a thing. And then, in response to Netflix, they launched their own streaming service, horror-themed Shudder. Now, the reason why they were able to do Shudder was because they had been, prolific in the horror scene with their Fright Fest, Horror Fest stuff for so long, more than a decade. And also because in the early 2000s, mid-2000s, they struck gold with the original series based on a comic book, The Walking Dead, which has basically been their fucking cash cow ever since. And even to this day. There's too much Walking Dead in the universe, and it's all because of AMC. Now, after a while, HBO, Disney, Hulu, and everybody else started launching streaming services. And even though they already had Shudder, they also launched AMC Plus, which is basically just their catalog of shows and movies on their own streaming app with access to Shudder's content if you want everything and don't want to just pay for Shudder, which is only $5 a month, commercial free by the way, or you could pay for AMC Plus and get Shudder included. But it is what it is. We're not talking about streaming. So, when I was a kid, back in the day, when we first started to get into cable in the early to mid-90s, we did fortunately have both AMC and TCM. Now, my dad preferred TCM because they played the movies he grew up with. The war movies mostly, and the old-timer stuff, the musicals. The old shit, The Mickey Rooney and the, Judy Garland and that stuff. AMC, on the other hand, they were playing movies like Indiana Jones and Rocky and Star Wars and, Karate Kid. Movies I heard of, movies I knew about, movies I had seen that weren't before my time. So, for me personally, I spent more time watching AMC than I did watching TCM. Now, because, I tried to have a relationship with my dad, and we never talked. The only thing we did was watched TV together, so I would sit and watch old shit with him on TCM. Occasionally, we would watch, Blondie and what was his name? Whatever. It was Blondie. Dagwood. Blondie and Dagwood. Or we would watch The Three Stooges. Or sometimes we would watch a Mickey Rooney, Judy Garland flick because they did like 1,000 movies together for some reason. But that was it. That's all I remember about either network. Because if I was going to sit and watch TV in the 90s, I was watching MTV or the Sci-Fi Channel. Occasionally Nickelodeon. If it was Saturday night, I was watching Snick. The rest of the time, I was watching MTV or like I said, the Sci-Fi Channel or whatever was on. Sometimes I would watch TBS, USA, etc. But I wasn't really. AMC was not my go-to network, and I had zero interest in TCM. Like zero interest in TCM. Eventually, American Movie Classics would just rebrand as the same as MTV did, where it no longer means music television. Today, it's just the letters MTV. It's the same thing. The letters are AMC. They don't stand for anything anymore. It's just the brand. So, they're more or less the Walking Dead network today. And then they've got Shudder, if you're interested in, like, legit good horror stuff. That's all I can say about these two networks, because that's as far as their similarities go. And as far as I can tell, neither one of them are really what they were back in the day. This is the same old story.